I'm a cardiologist doing a side hustle, thinking there's more to life than just being a physician, not necessarily content with being a cardiologist, but knowing that a real estate as a side vehicle can potentially help me expand who I want to be.
He has studied high performance, motivational psychology, business, and behavioral metrics. He is an MD, and he's now mentoring, teaching, and coaching others on how to uncover their inner legend. Vikram, Raya.
Energy is the new currency for entrepreneurs. The most successful entrepreneurs are super energetic. What I notice is a lot of entrepreneurs burn out. And why is that? Because they don't have stamina. They don't have the endurance.
Welcome to the Build It to Billions podcast, where we guide successful entrepreneurs and investors on their journey from millions to billions. We believe that the key to scaling your business and compounding your wealth starts every day with a mindset practice of stewardship over ownership and applying billionaire biblical principles. Our ultimate goal to help you scale and compound your wealth and life so you can give more or all of it away to help MVPs. I'm your host today, Brett Swartz, and every episode we feature some of the world's top entrepreneurs, millionaires, and billionaires. They share their principles, values, secrets, and wisdom, providing each of us with the insights we need to reach the next level of faith, success, and impact. Hey, I'm excited about our next guest. He's out of the area of Washington, D.C., and he has a tremendous background. He has studied high-performance, motivational psychology, business, and behavioral metrics. He is an MD, and he's now mentoring, teaching, and coaching others on how to uncover their inner legend. And he helps people ignite greatness and high achievement. In today's episode, we're talking about the 5 freedoms to unlock income and impact. Please welcome to the show with me, Vikram, Raya. Vikram, how are we doing?
Hey, Brett, thanks for having me, man. I love your podcast. I love the message. I mean, it's great. Everyone talks about trying to be a millionaire, but you're trying to talk about being a billionaire. And what's even more important is do it in alignment with nature, with God, with mission, which is beautiful. So I love that. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that encouragement. And for our listeners getting to know you for the first time, would you give us a little bit more about your story and your current focus?
Yeah. Young kid growing up, middle class in Atlanta. The goal was, like a lot of folks, hey, I want to do something with my life. No one in my family ever became a doctor. So I was like, hey, that sounds interesting. And, that was like a dream of my parents. And so I was like, all right, I don't have anything else better to do. Let me just go for it. And then it was hard. Was not the smartest of the bunch, but definitely had something that I think most successful people have, which is like this chip on their shoulder. And I was listening to some of the top speakers out there, and there's a common theme among the most successful people, Brett. I wanted to share with you. It's the most successful people have 3 things. They have, number one, they have not a superiority complex, but they think they have delusions of grandeur. They think they're meant for something big. And interestingly enough, there's an opposite belief they also have. They also believe that they're not good enough. And the final belief system that they have, and I would, if you probably went back and asked your millionaire, billionaire clients, they'd probably say this to you, Brett, is they also have impulse control. They know not only delayed gratification, but like decades of delayed gratification, which is highly unusual, right? A lot of people talk about the marshmallow test and things like that. So I didn't know all this, but I think some of that is true. Like, I feel like I was always not good enough. I always felt like there's something more out there for me to accomplish or do. And yeah, I can outrun people on the treadmill, not because I'm faster, but just because I won't stop. I'm competitive, right? And so that lended well to my journey. So I ended up becoming I went to Emory for undergrad in Atlanta, ended up going to medical school. It was all about more willpower and hustle more than like IQ for me. And then, in my family, I had 6 people who died of heart attacks, and it left a major impression on my life. And at that point, I was like, okay, I need to study cardiology. I went head on into the field, loved it. It was challenging. Obviously, there's a financial component to it, but then it was also just so intriguing to me. You had to be a people person. You had to know math and science. You had to know, how to run a business. And so it seemed really interesting. Once I started practicing, though, I had a slow decaying feeling that this is not what I thought it was. I noticed most people were economically driven and not impact driven. And I know that's a big thing about your show. It's like, how do we have impact? And so I realized, why is that? Is because they weren't sure where they had to put in so many hours, right? And, I read this really good book out there, and I recommend it to most of your audience. It's called Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. And he talks about the three levels of trade. And unfortunately, no one who really wants to become a multimillionaire or have a centimillionaire or even a billionaire stays on level one trade. Level one trade is trading time for money, right? That's what we all get started doing. I quickly realized I needed to learn more. And so I thought about options trading. I got my butt kicked. I even had an options coach. I was like, this is way too complicated, too hard. Then I settled on real estate. I read the seminal books by Kiyosaki, and I was like, all right, this makes a lot of sense. And I know plumbers who are millionaires. So in a way, I'm a plumber, right? I'm a cardiologist. I'm a plumber. I can figure this out. So I studied that. I tried the small stuff, single family homes, multifamily homes, and small duplexes, quads, retail strip malls. I did it with my father, who was in Atlanta at the time. I couldn't afford to buy in DC, so we did it in Atlanta. But at some point I realized, hey, it's all about LGS. And I think, Brett, this is really what everyone here talks about: leverage, growth, and scale. How do you do this, in a way that's meaningful, it has enough scale that, has impact both economically and, on other things. And so that's when I stumbled upon multifamily. And back when I was doing it in 2015, there's no traditional people like me, physician, for example, getting into the space. And so, I just helped a couple of people. Me and my partner decided to just tag along with someone else who was already doing it. We brought the only resource we had, which was we're surrounded by a lot of people who don't know what to do with their money, aka physicians. And they came, and they trusted us, which that's one of the values we had. We're in the profession, we know them, they've seen our track record. They're like, okay, we can rely on these guys. And so that led us to getting a couple of deals done, and then finally Viking Capital, which was our company we started in 2015, was launched when we took down our first deal in Atlanta. And so now I'll let you sort of maybe dissect some of this, but I'm a cardiologist doing a side hustle, thinking there's more to life than just being a physician, not necessarily content with being a cardiologist, but knowing that a real estate as a side vehicle can potentially help me expand who I want to be.
Absolutely amazing. I love all this, by the way. And I learn more about Viking Capital. He'll give you the website here later, but you can also go to his website, vikramraya.com. That's spelled VIKRAMRAYA.com. So a couple things I want to pull out some insights here, right? You said slow decay, right? The slow decay feeling, right? And we're going to dive into that here in a minute, right? And I want to dive into the wisdom to know when to move to change, and also the courage to burn the ships to move forward. And then you touched on these three things I want to also just encourage everyone to think about, meant for something bigger, right? The bigger impact, the feeling that, hey, you've been given certain gifts in this life, and we all have been, I believe, and these gifts have been given to us to be a blessing and impact to help other people, right? Also for us to maximize those gifts, not just to sit on those gifts, but to maximize them, which leads into the second part, like, hey, not good enough, right? In the sense that, hey, I got to continue to push on for growth here, right? So know that being a good steward of your gift is not settling for good enough, right? So it's one thing to say I'm not good enough. It's another thing to say I'm not being. We don't. Your identity should be, hey, I can be better. Or I can grow, and I can take that stewardship and say it's not good enough just to settle for good enough, right? And the next one is impulse control. I love that because I think we're in the age of, I guess patience and delayed gratification is, let's say the top virtue, if there ever was a virtue at this point in the history of where we're at. So we're going to touch on all of those themes. I want you to be thinking about that. But I do want to dive in right into the topic, and we'll keep those kind of as the thesis here, which is the 5 freedoms to unlock income and impact. 5 freedoms to unlock income and impact. So Vikram, what's the number one secret to unlocking, or just start with the top freedom to unlock income and impact?
Yes. So, income and impact are really what drives I would call it an enlightened entrepreneur, because at the beginning, we just want money, right? We all want money and we want time. And so I'm going to get into the 5 freedoms right now. So these 5 freedoms, I sort of learned from one of my mentors, and the moment I heard it, I was like, yes, this is what I'm chasing. I'm not chasing a dollar. I'm not chasing a net worth. I'm not chasing a couple of more hours on my schedule. I'm chasing this lifestyle design that I can live an epic life and I can have it all. And it's called stand for the and. It's not or. I want to be an entrepreneur, or I want to have impact, or I want to run a charity, or I want to be a good dad. No, I want it all. Yeah, why do we have to sacrifice, Brett? There's no need. Is there a way to get it all? And so I was on this journey to figure that out. And so without any further ado, here are the 5 freedoms. And in sort of the way I was sort of approaching them, number one was, first, you got to create free time. If you don't have free time, how can you learn anything new or start growing anything more? So I figured out time freedom and time management and time efficiency and my life management. Next was financial freedom, right? And it's really having multiple streams of income, and having what I call, not for, at least for the physicians out there, or for people, not having income outside of your W-2, I think is a better way to do it. And some of it's going to be active, some of it's going to be passive. I think people overrate passive income. The question really is, how passive is it? You can be somewhat passive, you can be really passive, you can be somewhat active. So I think it's a gradient, and people shouldn't get stuck on, I just want to sit in my underwear on the couch and get like multiple checks coming in. If you're waiting for that, you're going to be waiting a long time, And so we talked about time freedom, we talked about financial freedom. Then I'm like, if you don't have the engine of your body, of your physical vitality, your fitness, like this energy is a new currency for entrepreneurs, right? If the most successful entrepreneurs are super energetic, in general, and so I wanted to take care of my body, the physical, the temple that everything sits in. And I wanted to be able to run at a very high speed, because what I notice is a lot of entrepreneurs burn out. And why is that? Because they don't have stamina, they don't have the endurance. And so instead of trying to go all flame on, flame off, which you burn out after a couple of weeks or months or even years, I wanted to be able to run like this for decades. And so I came up with a system for that. Then it was really about mindset vitality, mindset freedom. It's like having the freedom to handle ups and downs of life. You've seen all these graphs of entrepreneurs, and there's something called the valley of despair, where you come up with that idea, you come up with a business, you're ready to scale it, and normally the opponents show up. It's not enough resources, not enough time, not enough employees, not enough, you're not making enough content, whatever the reason is. And many people switch to a new vehicle instead of staying in the valley of despair and muscling through that until they break through on the other side. And that's where all the success lies, right? Because every time you switch vehicles, it seems exciting at the beginning, and then you hit the next valley. So that mindset freedom is knowing that I'm resilient. I have everything I need within me. I can learn. I have mentorship. I can go to masterminds, conferences, coaches, whatever, or I can listen to my own inner wisdom, and I can just go through it. And I built a team around me of support and of positivity. And the final one is, and this is sort of an optional one, but hopefully, Brett, you enjoy this, and I starting to enjoy this. It's having location freedom. Managing, and for a physician, was impossible, especially before the pandemic. Now it's starting to become more possible. But imagine being able to work from anywhere in the world. Yeah, that geographic freedom, that location freedom. And so I was like, man, if I achieve that, when I achieve that, if I got to achieve that, what a wonderful life that would be. I'd be really well balanced. I'd live a phenomenal life. I think people would respect me. I'd respect myself for sure. And I'd have that 2 eyes we talked about, income and impact. So that's the 5 freedoms. And that's what I was sort of marching toward.
Oh my gosh, so cool. I love all of this. And I'm going to unpack some of it and some of the things that stuck out for me. I think the couple of ones that are really neat here are you have income and impact, right? You're not just stuck on one or the other, right? It doesn't have to be one or the other. You can be chasing your dreams as well as chasing impact, right? And I guess having that mindset that it's not an either or, it's an and, right? It's the first thing. There's no need to just sacrifice one or the other. In fact, one is going to feed into the other, right? And one's going to help you to do better on each one. And I think it's when we have a fixed mindset that we have to have one or the other. I think an example of this is I try to bring my kids everywhere I go as much as I can, practically, right? But part of that, we choose to homeschool our kids. So we have complete, I guess, location, but calendar freedom, right?
Wow.
Within and our goals and our values and what we're trying to instill. And that's been, now backing up, we grew up in a very traditional educational system, my wife and I, and her parents are, and grandparents, the Duke, the Stanfords, the PhDs, the very, very amazing background that we love. But we chose a different path for the freedoms that we were desiring for our family. So I love when you say location freedom. I kind of work my way backwards. I think it's not just location for being able to travel, but it's also location within the actual day-to-day or week-to-week or season-to-season with the family in case you have the kids. My kids are between 5 and 13, so we're kind of in the middle of all this. The next one I think it really stuck out was the mindset freedom, right? Where the mindset freedom is crucial because you're right, the vehicle switch, right? You think the new shiny object or that new thing, it's exciting to learn about. As entrepreneurs, we want to either game the system, hack the system, or find an easier, better way, faster way. But sometimes, or oftentimes, if we're not really digging into that valley to actually scale up or do the things that we need to do for the resources, I think that's so important because otherwise you kind of get stagnant, right? You get stagnant at the maybe the millions of revenue, and you're wondering how do the guys get to billions, right? How much more time and energy I need to put in there? Well, you gotta work through those tough things. Get the coach, right? Hire the person who's going to help you. I think hire the how or hire the who. Don't be the how, right? Comes to mind. I think energy freedom that one makes total sense. I think about the 20-mile march, right, where you're not doing it all right now. You're not just like, oh, I've got to get it all done today or this week, right? And then you burn out. Rather, you are managing your energy, right? And you're thriving with your energy. I think the last two are financial freedom. Most folks I think, who are listening to this, they're I say a lot of them are probably already there, but you're right. What is there, right? Because I had a client, we exited a 5 mobile home park portfolio, about a $10 million portfolio. He had built up enough passive income, passive, I say in quotations, to offset his living expenses, but he was still working the W-2. He was retiring from the W-2, but he found himself consumed with the mobile home parks, even though he had property management, even though there were good properties, good locations. He goes, I really wasn't passive with my time, right? And so we built a capital gains tax exit plan for him where he could actually truly be passive. I mean, like 100% passive, except for, hey, let me meet with the Viking Capital, let me meet with a different group to help diversify the capital. But he didn't have to do the toilets to trash liability. He didn't have to do the tax returns for the LLC. He didn't have to do any of the management of the managers, right? So I think the key is, what is truly passive for you? And the last one is I guess just time, which kind of involves all of these things. So those are some of the thoughts. Anything I missed there, or how did I?
I want to just stack on what you're saying, and people need people like Brett's company or other companies like that where they help financially architect what ideal life looks like. People are almost afraid to even wish for that, and I call this the upper limit problem. Right, and I learned this from Gay Hendricks. He talks about people are really good at the zone of competence. That's probably your W-2 or even a little bit more than that. Then your zone of excellence, where you're really, really good at this, and this is where most people expect you to be. Your family supports this; it's great. Then very few people live in the zone of genius. This is where you break the golden handcuffs. In my languaging, I have a book coming out called The Perfect Week Formula for Doctors. It's called the Gucci handcuffs, right? You live such a nice life that, you have Prada, Gucci, Hermes. You take the 2 to 3 luxury vacations a year. You have, a couple of million in the bank account. You're quote unquote successful by most people's means, but there's a sinking feeling that there's more on the table. You're afraid to go after it. And it's this upper limit problem. You're like, is this good enough? Am I okay? And that zone of genius is elusive, and it's where all the growth net comes. Tony Robbins talks about 6 human needs. There's a lot of needs out there, but the 2 that most people don't lean into is growth and contribution, and that's where the zone of genius is. It's where, and the Japanese call it ikigai, right? It's like what you're good at, what the world needs, what you're passionate about, and what can make you, what can be profitable. If you can find that, where all 4 lock in, you're synced in all 4. Oh my God, what a wonderful life. It's an amazing life. And that's where the people don't feel like work. They never want to retire because they enjoy what they work and play are the same thing.
And I think about compounding energy on that, right? Compounding momentum. A quote by Craig Groeschel. He has a leadership podcast. He says, momentum is greater than the sum total of all of our leadership, resources, and strategy combined, right? And when you're in that zone of genius, when you're in that zone of passion, when you're in that zone of impact, the momentum is like compounding interest, right? As you're practicing the daily habits, as you're practicing in your genius, as you're making an impact for other people, it just creates a momentum and an energy that you're right. How could I ever retire? Like I'm having too much fun. I'm making too much of an impact. I'm pulling out and absorbing as much that life can give, right? Which leads me to this thought, right? I think we want to get really practical here, right? Which you talked about in the beginning, the slow decaying feeling. So would you take us to a time or take us to the time, or maybe it's, like you had that slow decaying feeling and you're like, okay, I know I need to make a change, right? Maybe someone's listening to this right now. It's like, I know I need to make a change, either to hire that person, to fire that person, to leave that partnership, to start that partnership, to burn the ships for the W-2, to go all in, right? So talk about the slow decaying feeling a little bit more. And then number two, the wisdom to know when to move or make that change. And I guess adding to this, the courage to burn the ships. Walk us through that.
So I'll be very concrete. My salary first year as a cardiologist was $225,000, and I was like, oh man. Before that I was making 30 to 40, so I was like geeking out about that. But in DC, it's an expensive city. My wife, she's a physician. She also works, but we're trying to raise our kids here, and it was good. But then I was like, all right, the upward trajectory didn't. I think I maxed out at $400K was my salary, it's strong, it's good, but I mean, I felt I had more potential, and I don't want to be capped. Like if I can add more value to the earth, can I not have more, exchange in terms of compensation and other things? And so I was like, what's going on here? And then it's not even the income, right? It was the impact. I was treating and managing disease in a traditional way. You came in with high blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, heart attack, stroke, heart failure. And it's 90, probably, okay, maybe 80% of the time is due to lifestyle. And I was managing the repercussions of your lifestyle. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. It's almost like, hey, I'm losing money in my business. Let me just, try to keep cutting expenses versus figuring out where all of this came from and treating the underlying cause, right? An entrepreneur would go out of business if they did that. But in medicine, we're okay with that, right? It's like, and so I learned about functional integrative medicine. I was like, that's an interesting way to go about it. How do you get to the root cause of the problem? And then I've recently just stacked on biohacking and anti-aging and just, these longevity strategies. And so I wanted to launch a clinic that, that also was cash-based concierge. So then the upper limit, the cap was not there as well. And so that was an example of, look, I was super comfortable. The safe thing to do was stay and just, but I took a bold risk. And what allowed me to take that bold risk and transition and break the handcuffs was real estate. Because of the success of Viking, I was making where my side hustle was more than my main hustle. And then it allows you to take those leaps where you go after your passion businesses, your purpose businesses, if you will. And so I was able to run that clinic. And then now my next passion and purpose business is I love mentoring, entrepreneurs, physicians, high income earners into their next level of greatness. And so, I've been blessed to have 3 different companies in 3 different industries, all of which are making 7 or 8 figures. And it makes me so happy because none of it seems like work to me. It's play. And then the last thing I want to emphasize, Brett, and then I would love to hear your thoughts on it, is the concept of ELF and half. Once I know I'm in the zone of genius, it's easy, lucrative, and fun. ELF, ELF. And when you're not doing what you're exactly supposed to be doing, it becomes half. Hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating. And that's the source, universe, God, whatever you want to call it, telling you you're almost there, but not really there. You want a bit where it and you're not always everything's not going to be always easy, but in general, it doesn't seem like effort.
Yes. Okay. Love that. So much here. All right. By the way, if you guys want to get connected with Vikram, you can go to vikramraya.com, vikramraya.com. I'm going to spell it for you again, VIKRAMRAYA.com. I'll look up Viking Capital as
Yeah,
well.
and so Viking Capital is vikingmultifamily.com.
There it is. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah. So I'll work my way backwards again. So ELF and halves, right? So easygoing, loving, fun. We have a core value
Yeah.
for our strategic alliance, for the clients, for the people we work with, and also, first of all, it starts with us. We got to be easygoing, loving, and fun, right? Take our craft very seriously, what we do, but us as individuals, easygoing, loving, and fun. And then we also choose not to work with and or strategically align with hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating people, right? So that's one of our core values. So I like the way you just kind of think another way to think that through. I also heard a great concept too that I was one of my good friends, and he has a top podcast, and I'm on the podcast, and he talked about, hey, I'm a very loving person, but my values and standards are not. Right. And he separated the two, which I thought was a good way to think about it. Right. Like, I'm a very loving, respectful person, but my values and my standards are not. And they'll shut the door on that. Right. If those start to be, violated. Right. So I thought that was so good to think about.
That's a really nice.
Still be respectful, yet still set that boundary. And then I love it. You said you moved from passion and purpose, right? And at first you got to get it because you're married, you're single, or you're just trying to make it. And the kids are coming, like, it's kind of survival, right? And it's kind of just, get some margin. But at a certain point, it's whether or not you're going to settle for that being enough, or you're going to say, no, I'm going to lean into my passion. I'm going to lean into my purpose, and I'm going to scale. I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to step outside. So you did the side hustle, which was awesome. And then it moved past your main income, which gave you margin and gave you momentum to move. And then what was the I think the part where the wisdom to know that you will just walk away? Like, what point did you say, okay, did you set a date? That was it tiered? Like, walk us through that moment as well.
Sure. I wish I had the absolute guts to completely say, hey, I'm done. But I felt like, look, that would be irresponsible. I have a wife, I have a mortgage, I have 2 kids who were under the age of 5 at the time. And so it was more like, all right, how do you do it where it's respectful for the company that you've put so much energy and time into, and also for yourself? How do you do it that it doesn't, freak everyone out? And so I did it in a gradual way. I went from like 5 days a week to 4 days, and then 3 days. And then, once I had a 7-figure exit from real estate, I was like, all right, I have worst case scenario. And people don't realize it. All the people listening, if you have a W-2, you have what we call a backup plan. It's a parachute. And most of you probably have a golden parachute where you're making quite well as your W-2. So look, my worst case scenario in life, Brett, to be honest with you, is to go back and be a cardiologist. End of sentence. Like, that's my backup light in life. I think I'll be okay. But people don't see it that way. They fret about it. They worry about it. And James Clear in his book Atomic Habits talks about, if the decision is reversible, make it quickly and move on. If it's irreversible, take your time, think about it, really, persevere on it, and then make a decision. But the caveat to that, he says, is most decisions are reversible if you really go down and go to the details of it. So I knew that, if I took this bold move, I could always come back. I even asked my group, hey, if I go and completely fall flat on my face, would you take me back? And they're like, yeah, you're amazing. We'd love having you. We're going to miss you when you leave. And so it was the other day, I had dinner with one of my former colleagues. In fact, half of them invest in my investments. I talked to them. They're about to sell to private equity as a company. I'm giving them some of my advice on strategies. You never burn bridges, but you definitely make big moves. You can burn boats, but don't burn bridges. That's the quote.
Okay, awesome. Love that. And by the way, speaking of selling private equity and exiting and having big exits, part of what we do, what I do, when my focus is, my passion is unlocking capital gains to multiply freedom and impact. And it's our company called Capital Gains Tax Solutions. In fact, where I saw you speak, I spoke the year before, actually, at the Denver conference for the Best Ever Real Estate Conference, and then I saw you at the Salt Lake one. But it's using something called a deferred sales trust. Now, here's the thing. Most people get this thing confused with the Delaware statutory trust, and they sell to private equity their businesses but don't qualify for 1031. They sell that Bitcoin. They sell that multi-million-dollar multifamily property where they're not 1031ing. and they get crushed with capital gains tax, right? They don't have enough cost seg, they don't have enough bonus depreciation, right? And then they don't know that there's flexibility with timing with this. I'm curious, A, have you ever heard of a deferred sales trust? And or B, what other things besides cost seg are you working with those that are exiting? Because sometimes it's just tough to get enough bonus depreciation. When I think it's only 60% this year, right, to offset all of that gain when people exit this massive amount, of assets.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. That's amazing. That deferred sales trust. I've learned about the concept, but to be honest with you, I don't think I think about it enough. I don't think a lot of my clients or my my colleagues think about it enough. So, in fact, I want to get you on my podcast, which is the Limitless MD podcast, where we talk about freedom, wealth, and human optimization. I'm like, this is wealth optimization right here. So we need to dissect that further so you can help more and more people save millions and potentially billions on their taxes.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, you can learn more about it by going to capitalgainstaxsolution.com if anyone wants to learn. And you can check out the book, Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan. It's a best-selling book on Amazon. And we have that as a way to help you as the listener and you as the business owner, right? Plan very well. We've done it with Bitcoin. We've done it with multi-million-dollar business sales, real estate, all across the country. Go to Amazon, pick up Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan. That being said, Mr. Vikram, we're running out of time. Are you ready for the lightning round? Although, before we go to the lightning round, is there any questions that I haven't asked yet that you think I should ask, or that's just on your mind with anything that's happening right now with leadership, with the economy? We talked a little bit before about some tax stuff, like anything that kind of comes to mind. You're like, oh, I really want to talk about this wealth thing. You talked about Ray Dalio a little bit before the show. Like what?
Yeah, let's talk about two things. One, it's there's a quote by Warren Buffett, and he talks about him and a colleague of his. I mean, they both went to the same school. The guy was super intelligent, super brilliant, and Warren was good, but not as good as this guy. And fast forward a couple years later, the guy's successful. He ended up going to a steel company, became an executive, really took it to the next level. But Warren obviously became Warren Buffett, and the question really is, what was the difference? And a lot of people talk about how, rowing hard. It's about rowing very fast and hard, and putting the effort in. But very few people realize it's also the vehicle. So the quote was, it's not how hard you row, it's what boat you're in. And so that really landed well. And so I'm glad I chose real estate as an investment vehicle. And, it's just one of my passions, but it allows me to do all my passions. And it's going to create generational wealth for me. And I think it's creating generational wealth for all my investors. And so it's not how intelligent I am. It's how long I stayed the course. I stayed with one asset class, multifamily. I started in 2015. It's almost 10 years now. And I've seen a lot of my competitors come and go. I've seen the people who I was looking up to. They were my pace cars. If I was in the Indy 500, they were the pace cars. They've sputtered out, right? And we are about to hit $1 billion of assets. We're actually, this is our most active year to date in real estate, and everyone else is pencils down. And I'm like, what was the difference? I think it was staying the course. It's playing the slow game. It's consolidating gains. It's investing in leadership, and it's investing in my own self, because the bottleneck for most companies is the leadership. It's the owner. It's the CEO. It's the founder. And so I'm constantly like devouring information, knowledge, mentorship, coaching, and then I pour that onto my team, and we overpay our team members, and they'll be like, "Oh, are you sure of that?" I'm like, "Yes, we are." So we're overpaying our team because we want the best of the best. And when you pay for like these all-stars and AA players, it's the biggest arbitrage move you can do in business, but you can only do it once, because once you pay them and they're on your team, you can't get that again. But it's one of the biggest needle movers you can do.
Absolutely amazing. We're running out of time, so we got to jam into lightning round now. And that was amazing, by the way. Go back and check that out. Just rewind that and play that back. That was huge right there. Okay, number one book you've recommended or gifted the most in the past year?
The Almanac of Naval Ravikant.
Okay, question number two. What are you most curious about right now?
I'm curious about how many rate cuts we're going to have.
Question number three, number one way you're using ChatGPT.
I use it for everything. Sometimes I just use it to like just discuss like personal problems. There's a conversation mode on ChatGPT, which I really like. I'm writing a book. It's helping me with that. I use it for marketing, statistics. It's replaced Google.
Absolutely love it. Number one way you create and sustain momentum.
I set unreasonable goals and expectations, and then find a way to at least hit 80% of them.
I like that. Number one leadership quote or theme that you strive to live by.
Winston Churchill says, I think success is going from failure to failure without losing any enthusiasm.
Excellent. And last question, we'll wrap it up. After all your success, helping all the people you've helped gain financial, legacy, wealth, life, freedom, and basically, unlocking, all these freedoms, for helping people unlock these freedoms, right? What is the best way that you practice, a stewardship mindset over ownership? What does that mean to you? And who is a cause or a group or something that you're really passionate about to give back?
Yeah, I'm on the board for a lot of charities, but it's and the other cool thing is I'm starting to do. I was like, how do I still practice medicine? Because I sort of given up the stethoscope in 2018, but I was still practicing sort of with the functional stuff. But I was like, how do I still use my skill sets and talents and still help the world and make it fun? And so I thought about a concept where you combine Doctors Without Borders with Four Seasons. And so we're creating these high-end retreats where I'm going to take a group of doctors all over the emerging hot spots all over the world, and we're going to go help them and build hospitals, help clinics, diagnose disease, and to the poorest of the poor, but still have a fun luxury retreat afterward and have the best of both worlds.
Absolutely amazing. Vikram, it's been an absolute pleasure and honor to have you on the show. I want to encourage you to keep using your willpower, your hustle, your belief that you're meant for something bigger, that sometimes, hey, I got to work even harder because good enough's not good enough. And then practicing also patience and wisdom with impulse control to make a difference in people's lives, with freedom, with impact, with wealth. For our listeners who want to get in touch with you, would you remind them one last time what's the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, they can find me on all the social media handles at Vikram Raya, and then also my website, vikramraya.com. And then if they want to know about the real estate stuff, vikingmultifamily.com.
Perfect. Thanks, Vikram. I also want to thank all of our listeners for listening to an episode of the Build It to Billions podcast. As always, we believe most entrepreneurs, millionaires, and billionaires, sometimes we need a good reminder of practicing stewardship over ownership and also looking at new ideas that Vikram brought to the table today on mindset or just encouragement on these things. Another way to look at it, I want to encourage you to keep using your gifts, your talents to scale, not just from millions to billions, but scale for impact to make a big difference in your life, your family's life, and the life of the most vulnerable people in this world. I'm Brett Swartz again. Thanks so much for watching the podcast. Check out us on capitalgainstaxsolutions.com as well for any highly appreciated exit planning. And look for me on maybe a Vikram's podcast as well. Check him out on YouTube as well. He also has a lot of stuff going on there, and we appreciate everyone out there. Bye now.